Ukrainian officials are still painting this extremely bleak picture of the fighting in the east, especially around the town of Severodonetsk. This has been the case for several days now, this fighting grinding on there. President Zelensky describing it as very fierce fighting indeed, seeing that Russian forces were battling hard for every single meter of land there. And the regional governor of the Luhansk region, in which Severodonetsk is situated, said that 2 of 3 bridges into the town have now been destroyed by Russian forces, leaving just one bridge which is in a very damaged condition, meaning that trucks cannot pass for risk of collapse, and saying that that bridge is coming under constant fire. So that means that further evacuations are extremely difficult, if not impossible, and of course cuts off a supply route and a tactical route for Ukrainian forces. So they are still holding on to a patch of land in an industrial plant where there was a fire on a chemical factory, Ukrainian officials say, where civilians were sheltering. But at the moment it's extremely precarious still. And again, Ukrainian officials calling for more weapons from the west and saying that they need to get them to the east of Ukraine urgently, because all the delay can be counted, according to the defense minister, can be measured in Ukrainian blood. This is a new report by Amnesty International entitled "Anyone Can Die at Any Time," and it centres on the city of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city, where I myself and our team from France 24 spent several weeks reporting. Amnesty International have confirmed that it was coming under indiscriminate bombing on residential areas. That is something we witnessed and reported on ourselves firsthand. Amnesty International also have been on the ground collecting evidence of the weapons used. They say they have proof that cluster munitions and scatter landmines were used, which are illegal under international conventions. So they are accusing the Russian army, the Russian state, of war crimes, specifically there in that northeastern city of Kharkiv, which, as we know, came under extremely intense shelling for the first weeks and months of this war. Since then, Russian forces have been pushed back somewhat, but they are continuing their activities in the area, and there continue to be bombings on residential targets which are hitting civilians and killing people sporadically in that city there in Kharkiv. President Zelensky saying that the battle for Severodonetsk was a very fierce battle, and we've seen that fighting continuing for days and weeks now as Russian forces seem to be advancing throughout the city. The head of the Luhansk region, where Severodonetsk is situated, says that Russians do occupy around 90% of the city now, but that they are still in control. The Ukrainians are still in control of industrial areas on the outskirts. He says that fighting is taking place on the streets there. But the Ukrainians have been losing ground, and this is something we've been seeing increasingly in recent days. So these announcements perhaps preparing the Ukrainian public and the international community to announce in some time the loss of Severodonetsk. Now, President Zelensky said that in many ways the future of the Donbas was being played out there, so that does not bode well for that battle, although it has to be said the Ukrainian forces are still holding on to the town of Lysychansk, which is just across the river from Severodonetsk, but it's coming under very heavy shelling indeed. So extremely fierce fighting there taking place in the Donbas, and the Russians seem to be advancing, but that is taking place very slowly with this fierce artillery battle, which has been so characteristic of the fighting in the east of Ukraine. The Ukrainian authorities have been keeping up their appeals to the West to supply them rapidly with more heavy artillery, which can reach long-range targets. Now, some of that we've been hearing from military officials has been arriving on the front line. So there have been images of the Ukrainian armed forces showing off howitzer and other artillery systems to foreign media, saying that this is making a difference for them in that battle for the east, that with that they're able to carry out precision strikes which are taking out Russian artillery batteries. But they say they need more of this, and they need it fast, because every day that goes past, the Ukrainian forces forces, and Ukrainian territory is being pounded by Russian artillery, who've been, as we've seen, destroying many of the towns that then they hope to go on and take with troops advancing further forward. So very much, yes, the mission from the Ukrainian government, the message, from the Ukrainian government is we need more supplies. Do not forget about the war in Ukraine, and there's hoping that there won't be a fatigue or a reluctance which is starting to set in the West.